Hello everyone, welcome to our second week technical demo. In this week, we are going to create an album cover or a poster design. This is the result of our technical demo. Basically, we have three elements in this graph. First of all, we have a main graph in the center, and secondly, we have the noise in the background. Thirdly, we have the title and subtitle under the main graph. The user interaction is when we move my mouse to the left side, it rotates in the counterclockwise direction. And if my mouse moves to the right, it rotates in the clockwise direction. And if my mouse in the center, it stops to rotate. To achieve this result, we will use three different techniques. First of all, we're going to use the shape transformation. It includes translate, pop and push, rotate. We're going to use for loop to create a list of circles and multiple points pop up as the background. And we're also going to use the text function, random function, to create different effects. So let's go to our web editor, and don't forget to change the name of this sketch to Week 2 Technical Demo. When you start a sketch, always to remember, you write down the author and your name, and also the use of this sketch, probably second week tech demo. Don't forget to include the instruction to interact. When the mouse moves to the left, then it rotates in a counterclockwise direction, and when the mouse moves to the right, rotate clockwise. There are two basic functions we introduced last time is setup and function draw. As a refresh of your memory, setup is to initiate the whole program, and it only runs once in the beginning of the program. Draw loops forever. So basically, it used to create different kinds of animation effects. And the first function we always want to include is create canvas. The size of the canvas will be window width and window height. Those are the two functions we introduced in our last technical demo. So that makes our canvas in the same size with the window size. And then we create a background. And we want our background to be black. So you might ask, what is the difference between put the background function inside of the setup function with the background function inside of draw function? If we want to create a effects like a trace with your brush stroke, and then background will be only run once. So it only runs in the beginning so that you can create a trace. But if the background in the draw loops, and then background will updating the whole thing every time it loops the draw function, that means the whole canvas will be cleaned up to black every time it loops. So we can create a motion of the different shapes. So let me create an example for this. For example, if we want to create a dot instead of our mouse icon, I want to introduce the function called noCursor. So once we have noCursor inside of the draw function, we will not see any cursor icon when my mouse plays on the canvas. And then I want to create a circle, and the circle x position will equals to mouse and the y position will equals to mouse y position. And the size of the circle, let me do 5 probably, and then fill it white. And I don't want any stroke. So we see our mouse here, but it's not in mouse icon, it's actually in the shape of a circle. If we want to create a trace of the mouse, then we create our background in the setup because it only runs once. Then we can see the trace. So you see the difference, right? If we put the background in the draw, we will only see the movement. We will not see the trace. Because for this assignment, we want to emphasize on the motion part more, so we will not create background inside of the setup function. But you might ask, what if we want to create a trace and the motion together? Then we have to use other techniques we will introduce in the following weeks. So for now, we will just simply put the background inside of the draw function. Okay, secondly, we want to create a main graph. Let's see. Our main graph is actually consists of a list of different circles. Let's create a circle first. Circle position of the circle is actually in the center of the canvas. And the circle size, let's do probably 50. Okay, we have a circle in the center. And we don't want any fill for this circle. And we want the stroke to be white. We want our stroke weight to be 1. And let's run it. Okay, we have one circle. And you might ask how to create the second circle. And it's slightly bigger than this one. Probably the size will be 70. And there's another circle. And if we want to create the third circle and slightly bigger than this, and then we have our third circle. Because we want the gap between different circles to be the same, so we always increment 20 each time. This is actually 50 plus our gap. We declare the gap in the beginning. We say gap is 20. Then we want the gap to be gap multiplied by 2. And this one is actually gap multiplied by 1, right? And let's run it again. Yes, it's the same. The fourth circle will be multiplied by 3. So if we multiply by 3, it means it adds another gap. And then we have another circle. And then we can do the fourth one like this, right? We can do this forever, but what we want to have our probably the fifth, we want to have 50 different circles, and we might have to write this function 50 times, and it's very repetitive and ineffective. But let's see, if we want to have the 49, it's actually 50 because we already have the first one gap multiplied by 0, right? We want to have our 51 here. Let's run it. So it's already out of the canvas. Let's see, probably 15. So what if we want to use a function or method that can make these repetitive actions easier? That's for loop. So if we go to a reference page and search for, and then we can have the definition for the for loop. For creates a loop that is useful for executing one section of code multiple times. And let's go back to here. We comment out all the circles first. We say for let I equals to 0. First argument means where to start. You might already know from the previous video. And the second argument is where to end. And the third argument means how much it increment each time. For example, I want it to be say 15 different circles. I want it to be increment every time by 1. We write double plus. And if we want to increment by 2, we write this way. By 3, we write this way. Okay. So we want it to be incremented by 1. And as we can see from this function, the number multiplied by gap is different. So for the first circle, we use 0 to multiply by gap. And second one, we use 1. And third one, we use 2. Fourth one, we use 3. We can basically use I instead of those numbers because first time, I equals to 0. And second time it loops, I equals increment by 1, so I equals to 1. And third time it loops, I increment by 1 and it's 3. It's just repetitively doing this action instead of we have to write down every time. So we can delete this and then let's run it. Yay, so we have 15 circles together. Okay, so let's adjust the gap and the circle numbers and the circle size a little bit. So I adjust the gap to be 10 and the circle number means I have 40 circles layering together. I have 40. Circle size means the smaller size of the circle is this one. Okay, the next step is I want the circle to rotate based on the mouse position. So once we use rotate function, From the last video you saw from Daniel Shipman about translate, transformation, rotate, and push and pop, we know we have to use translate function and rotate function together. Basically, main graph, we need a push and pop. If we go to the reference and search push, we know that push function is actually saves the current drawing style settings and transformation, while pop restores those settings. So basically, those functions are always used together, and they allow you to change the style transformation settings and later return to what you had. So once you translate your coordination system to the other origins, after you put pop, other things will not be affected by this translate. Basically, push and pop just blocks a section of the code within their own origins inside of push and pops. So we have translate here, and we do rotate after translate. The circle's position is in the middle of the canvas, so it's at the width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. Basically, we can write the width divided by 2 and height divided by 2 to replace this with 0, which means we move the origins of this whole section to the width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. The relative position of the circle to the whole system is 0 and 0, which means circle is at the origins of this whole section, which is width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. So let's run it again, and it works. Now we should put rotate angle, create a variable for the rotate angle. We always have to declare this variable in the beginning of your program. We define the angle here. Then we can use a function called angle mode and set degrees. So we use the degrees to present angles. Angle equals to, we use map position because we want to map the mouse X from the 0 to width from probably minus 90 and 90. So let's run it. It's hardly to see it rotate because it's a circle, but if we change it to arc, you might ask what is arc. I think some of the people in our class might experiment with arc. It's inside of the 2D shape function. Arc using different parameters to create an arc. The syntax is like this. The first number means x coordinates of the arc's ellipse, and y means y coordinate, and w means width, h means height. And start and stop means the angle to start arc, and stop means the angle to stop arc. All we can do, for example, the position is still the same. The size, because we want the arc to be in a circle shape, it's not the ellipse, so basically the width and height are the same. The start angle, we probably say start from 45 degrees because we already changed our angle mode to degrees. In the reference, it's using pi or quarter pi. Here, we only need to use the degrees. So we use the 45 means 45 degrees. Okay, so the start angle may be from 45 and end may be 360. You can experiment with different numbers, and let's run again. Now we can see an arc, and we can see if we move my mouse to the left, it's rotate to here, and to the right, rotate to the other way. If we want to experiment with different number of this arc, we can do, for example, 200 here, and or probably 100. What if we want our arc to be different in different circle? As we include I here to multiply by gap, which means every time you create arc, it's different. However, if we include the I in the end angle, for example, if we do like this, it makes different arc for different circles. Okay, so we can experiment with it. For example, we can do divided by 2 or divided by 3. And you can experiment with different numbers. Once you include I, it makes each arc different. Okay, so if we go back to our example here, we'll see it's not just changing the rotation degree, it also changing the rotate speed. So how can we change the rotate angle speed? For example, if we want our arc to increment by 1 each time, you can do this. it's rotating by itself. It will not be affected by my mouse position. This actually means angle plus 1. However, if we put our map function here, and then let's run it again, we will change the speed now. Originally, we put negative 90 and positive 90. It's too much. It's rotating too fast. So maybe we can do negative 0.5 and 0.5. Yeah, looks better. And also, we can still experiment with different variable. For example, what if we include the rotating angle to the arc? So if we do like this, the angle to stop the arc is changing based on the rotate angle. And the rotate angle is actually changing based on my mouse position. So it will create this kind of interactive effects. If we have the eye here to make different arc different, and then we include the angle here. And multiply by I as well. See? We'll have some really nice effects. And you can definitely experiment with it. For example, if we don't include eye here, and we just include angle, it will be a little bit different. Basically, this parameter is where to start the arc, and this parameter is where to end arc. So we can always use a different variable to changing the arc to create different kind of effects. And for example, if I want this divided by 2, and like this. Okay. And I still feel it's rotating too fast. So maybe I can do like this, 0.1 in angle here, and I'm using angle here. Okay. So next step is to create a random noise as a background. So if we want to create a noise in the background, we might want to create a noise. It consists of a lot of points. So we might draw the point first, and we want it to be in the random width, random height. If you are familiar with point is another 2D shape function. It only consists of two parameters, x-axis and y-axis. And it also includes z-axis, but we will talk about z-axis in the following weeks. Our x-axis of the points, I want it to be in the random position, and the height, I also want it to be in the random position. And how to change the point size is actually using the stroke weight. So we only see one point pop up in a different position in the canvas. What if we want to have 100 different points pop up together? So we have to, using for loop, this is where to start, and then this is where to end. So I want 100 different ones, and I'll be I++. So basically that means I draw the point 100 times. Yay, so we have the noise as a background. I also suggest you to create a variable for the numbers, then we can change in the beginning of the program. Let's see, declare pt num equals to 100. That means we have 100 numbers of points popping up as a background. If we want it to be fewer points, we can do 10, and then we'll have fewer points. So it's up to you. Okay, so I will do 15. Next step is to create a title for title and subtitle for the album cover. Let's stop the rotating first, and yeah, let's just leave it here right now, and let's do the title. So actually we have push and pop to block different sections for the visual elements, but if for this example we didn't use translate function, so we can actually delete push and pop. So basically push and pop is to separate different sections with translate function. So what if we want our title and subtitle have a translate function? We have to create a push and pop. Okay. And we create a translate, and we want title to be in the center of the width and also under the main graph, so probably -20. And then how to create the text? We go to the text reference. We normally have text font and text size and text align and also text. So text function is to create this is the content for the text, and this is the x-axis and this is y-axis for the text. We can use the text font, go to a text font, and there are several different text fonts. We can use in Georgia or Helvetica. Those are some default font is already included in the system. But if you have specific font you want to use, you might have to use preload function. But we haven't covered this technique yet, but we will talk about in the future. So basically you just using whatever the font is already provided by the system. So if we go to the web save font, we can see what is the font is generally available across all systems. Basically we have Arial or Georgia or Times, different ones you want to pick. I'll just pick Arial for now. We can do Arial. And then text align, I want to do center. And text size, probably smaller, 10. And text is UFL, okay? And the position will be in the center of the space. And because we already have translate here, translate after push, and say it's width divided by 2 and height -20. And so in relate to this position, we are just right at the origins of this coordination system. Let's run it to see what happens. Arial is not defined. Probably we need a quotation mark and to see. Yes, it works. So we have UFO here. So we need a quotation mark around the typeface name. And I want it to be bigger. Okay, so let's uncomment on the angle here. And let's delete this line. And run it again. Okay, so now we have something similar to the result of our demo. And we also need a subtitle. So subtitle, we just basically create another text and change the content for the text. And see, this is at the same position with the UFO, so we need to move it down a little bit, so we say 20. So probably we have to move up a little bit, like 60. And we need to change the text size for the subtitle to let it to be a little bit smaller. We need to delete the stroke for those letters. Now it looks better. Yes, this is what we have. And I probably wanted to move up a little bit more. Let's do 90 and refresh. Oh, sorry, I forgot to save. Save is Command S. Let's create a square as the border. No fill for the rectangle, and then stroke to be white, and stroke weight, I'll say 2, and rectangle, the position of the rectangle, I want it to be in the center, so it will be width divided by 2 and height divided by 2. We can also use in translate and push and pop, but for this case it's only a rectangle, so we can just to create directly to put width divided by 2 and height divided by 2 as the position of the rectangle. We don't need to create another translate function. And but you can still create one. And the size, probably rectangle size, create a variable rectangle size. Okay, let's define the rectangle size here. Probably 400. And let's run it. See, It's actually centered at the left top corner of the rectangle. So that means we need to change the rectangle mode to center. Because the default value is corner. If you search rectangle mode in the reference page, you will see the default value is corner. And let's change it to center. It's a little bit small, so let's change the size to, okay, much better. And one small element, you might notice that if I change the point number to 100, and then you can see a lot of points is actually outside of this rectangle. In our demo, it's actually all inside of this rectangle. So we need to create the if condition for the noise in the background. We actually need to create a range for the random function to work for those points. So we only want the points to be in negative rectangle size divided by 2 and rectangle divided by 2, rectangle size divided by 2. And we also need the same for the height, because we set rectangle size divided by 2, size divided by 2 is actually based on the same coordination system with the rectangle we draw. So maybe we can create a push and pop for both parts. Let's cut this part and to paste it here. Okay, that's using the tidy code to clean up a little bit. And then we have to create a translate now. So push and pop. Okay, so we create a push and pop, and we'll create another translate. And we need to change the rectangle to be 0 and 0. And let's run again. Okay, so those points are all included in the rectangles. The reason I changed this whole part into the same section with the album cover border is I want this part, random noise, to share the same coordination system with the rectangle we draw. The origins be in the center of the canvas. If I don't move it here, the origins is actually on the left top of the corner. If you have any questions about this part, please definitely message me or email me. We can talk more about the details. This is our second week demo, and I hope you really enjoy the demo and create some nice visuals.